My name is Vorik, Senior Field Analyst, Galactic Survey Core Point 7th Expansion Division, that I have surveyed 43 worlds, that I have walked on planets that smelled like burning metal, planets that glowed in darkness, planets where the wind could peel armor off a rock creature in seconds. None of them prepared me for Earth. Let me be very clear that I was not sent to Earth because it was dangerous. That is exactly the problem, that I was sent because it was considered routine, not a simple biodiversity survey. Nothing special, nothing threatening, just another green planet. Before departure, my commander, Dalvex, placed a hand on my thorax. He smiled. That slow, careless smile he uses when something is beneath him. Try not to bore yourself, Vorik. I am no longer on speaking terms with Commander Dalvex. The mission location, human territory, South America, a region called the Amazon. Over 5 million square kilometers of forest. For 3 human years, they have been sending us messages, polite. Come. Repeated, do not enter without coordination. Do not survey without permission. Our diplomatic office classified those messages as non-binding cultural requests. So they sent me anyway, with a full team, advanced equipment, and a scanner worth more than entire civilizations. That office no longer exists, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We landed at 0600 hours at IT first. Everything looked perfect. The air was rich, warm, full of life. Our biologist, Feta, was almost shaking with excitement. This is incredible, she said. The density of life here, it's off every chart. I remember thinking, good, easy mission, that I was wrong. The first sign came 40 minutes later. Our lead vehicle stopped, not from damage, not from terrain. That IT stopped because something had grown through it, that the root. Thick, solid, alive. That IT had pushed through reinforced plating. Let me explain something. The gap in that plating was 3.2 centimeters. The root was 4.1 centimeters wide. That should not be possible. IT didn't grow into the GAP. IT forced the gap to grow around it. The metal bent, slowly, quietly, like the forest had all the time in the universe, because it did. Pull it back, I ordered. Pesh tried. The vehicle screamed under pressure. The root did not move. That IT took us 2 hours to free it. 2 hours for a plant. Feta was fascinated. Every organism here is competing, she said. They're constantly adapting, negotiating space. I looked at the bent metal. Negotiating, I repeated. That was not the word I would have chosen. That we continued on foot. That was our first mistake. The air outside our filters was alive. Not metaphorically, literally. Every breath contained spores, bacteria, viruses, and something else, signals, chemical signals. The trees are communicating, Feta said. I told her that was impossible. She showed me the data. That I stopped saying that word. Then we used the ground scanner. That was our second mistake. The scanner sent a pulse into the ground, and something sent one back. The system crashed instantly. Our technician, Rowe, just stood there. Are fours supposed to do that? He asked it. No, they're not. We made camp at midday. Everything was already going wrong. Skin reactions, equipment issues, sticky resin covering our tools, and I needed to write a report. That when the bird landed right next to me, that I've seen alien wildlife before. They either run, freeze, or display aggression. This one, it just watched me. Then it made a sound, out a perfect sound. The exact tone of our atmosphere processor powering on. I checked the machine. That IT was already on. The bird made the sound again. Then something worse. That IT mimicked the grinding noise our vehicle made earlier when we're trying to free it. Perfectly. Every detail, every rhythm. Then it flew away. That I sat there for a long time. Something felt wrong. Not dangerous. Not yet. Just aware. The afternoon got worse. That we lost a drone. Not from malfunction. Not from interference. That a spider caught at point 1. Spider IT had built a web overnight, strong enough to trap a flying machine. The drone didn't even recognize it as a threat, because technically it wasn't solid, but it was strong enough that our O retrieved it. The spider didn't move. That IT just watched, like it allowed it. That night, it didn't talk much. I tried writing my report, deleted it, wrote it again, deleted it again, because I didn't know how to write. The forest is watching us. At 2,100 hours, the rain started. Not normal rain. This was overwhelming. The ground stopped being solid. Everything became wet, and anything wet started growing things. That I tried to sleep. Then I heard it again, the bird, through the rain. This time, it was mimicking our drainage system, struggling, failing. And that's when I understood something. The forest wasn't attacking US.IT, wasn't hunting US.IT, wasn't even trying to stop US.IT, was just continuing. And somehow, that was worse. Morning of day 2 started with a small problem, the kind that doesn't look important until you understand what caused it. Our atmosphere processor, the one the bird had copied, was blocked completely. The intake filter was packed with seeds, not a few, not a handful, that millions, so small you couldn't see one alone, but together enough to choke a system designed to filter particles down to microscopic size. That's not possible, Pesh said. It seals tight. It does, down to less than a millimeter, which means those seeds didn't just enter the system. They found a way in. Feta examined them like it was a gift. Cecropia, she said softly. Pioneer species, extremely adaptive. She smiled. It found your machine in one night. It didn't find anything, I said. It drifted in. Random chance. She looked at me. That quiet look scientists give when they already know you're wrong. That I cleared the filter. BY 1100 hours. It was blocked again. That we moved deeper into the forest because that's what the mission required. And because I had not yet reached the point where I was ready to admit we should leave, that I should have. Within 1 kilometer, the forest changed. The canopy didn't just close, IT sealed. Light barely reached the ground. Everything was green, dim, filtered, like the forest was deciding how much. Light we deserved. The air outside our processors felt like water. Warm, thick, heavy, and the ground was moving. Roots everywhere, some as thick as pillars, some thin and sharp, some rising above the soil like walls, and some shifting, slowly, but enough that you could notice it if you paid attention. Pesh stopped walking twice. The path was here, he said, but it wasn't anymore. Not exactly. The forest had adjusted, just a little, just enough. T10 30 hours, Roe called me over. His voice was careful. The scanner's reading movement, he said, underground, the root network, moving, not slowly, not randomly, coordinated. The system flagged it with something I had never seen before. A note, small, quiet, but impossible to ignore. Possible intentional response. I looked at Roe. He looked at me. Neither of us said it out loud. The roots were moving toward us. Continue the survey, I said, because saying anything else would have meant accepting what was happening, and I wasn't ready for that. T11:17. We got proof point. One of the large roots had moved point 10 minutes earlier. Wasn't touching our equipment. Now, it was that we measured at point 3 times. Then 4.18 centimeters in 10 minutes. That is not growth. That is movement. Feta sat down slowly, staring at the data. The signals increased when we scanned, she said. The network responded. She pointed at the root. This is the response. I took a breath. Then another. I have handled dangerous missions before. Hostile creatures, equipment failures, unknown environments. This was different. You're saying, I said carefully, that the forest scanned us back, shared that information, and reacted? Feta didn't answer immediately. Then she said, the data supports that. I don't panic. That's part of my training. But something inside me shifted. That I sent a priority message to Commander Dalvex. Category 2 concern. Clear, direct, professional. His reply came 14 minutes later. Noted. Continue survey. Organic interference is expected. I read it twice. Then I put the communicator away. And that's when things got worse. The vines have been cutting through them all morning. Slow work, but manageable. What we didn't notice was what was happening behind us. Pesh stopped, turned around, and said nothing. For 4 seconds, that was enough. That I looked. The path we had cut was closing. Not fast, not suddenly, slow, steady. The vines were moving inward. Quietly, patiently. The opening we made hours ago was now half its size. Our way back was disappearing. Begin withdrawal, I said, calm, controlled, professional. Though we turned back. In the forest, let us go. That's the part that still stays with me. That IT didn't trap us, that didn't attack us, didn't block our path completely. That IT just made leaving harder. And while we walked, it did something else. The air became heavier. Humidity spiked. Within minutes, everything was wet. And on that moisture, things started growing. Right in front of us. Fungal colonies forming on our equipment, spreading across metal surfaces, ignoring material limits, Feta watched in horror. It shouldn't grow this fast, but it did. Then the insects came, not swarming, not attacking, tracking. They stayed just outside our repellent field, matching our movement, adjusting when we adjusted at our increased power. They adjusted again and again. It feels like he said quietly, like something is watching us think. And then the bird came back that IT moved ahead of us, branch to branch, watching, listening. Then it made a sound, not a machine this time, not a tool, but a signal. Feta grabbed my arm. Her voice dropped. That's her distress signal. I froze. The exact tone, the exact pattern, the message I had sent to Commander Dalvex. The bird had heard it, and now it was repeating it. Not to US.to the forest. We made it back to camp. In 01 spoke. Not because we didn't have anything to say, but because we didn't know how to say it. That I filed the withdrawal report immediately. Category 1. Full operational withdrawal. That level cannot be ignored. IT demands attention. IT demands action. That I wrote everything. The roots, the scanner response, the vines closing, the insects tracking us. The bird repeating our signal. That I attached the data, sensor logs, visual recordings, audio files, proof, clear, clean, undeniable. Then I waited. Dalvex replied 6 hours later. Longer message this time. Formal. Cold point 3 paragraphs of procedure. Point 1 paragraph reminding me of mission objectives. And then the last part, he said my conclusions were unsupported. He said my report was implausible. That I read it once. Then again, slowly. Then I sent him something else. That a video. The bird sitting on a branch, making our distress signal perfectly. I also requested something very specific. Inform the Human Diplomatic Office, because at that point this was no longer a survey. This was contact. I began packing our equipment carefully, quickly, because I had made a decision. 2 days in this forest was enough. That if you need more than 2 days to understand you are not welcome, you should not be here. That we left before dawn. The forest watched us go. That I know how that sounds. That I do. But when you walk through a place and every sound matches you, every movement adjusts to you, every space behind you closes, you understand something. You're not alone. They are not. In the way you think. During the extraction march, the birds followed us. Not one, not two, many. And all of them were making sounds. Our sounds, footsteps, equipment clicks, metal movement. And twice, clearly, Commander Dalvex's voice noted, exactly as he said, IT.tone. Pause. That everything in translation delay. In distortion. Perfect. That was the moment I stopped thinking of the birds as animals, because sound was being collected, stored, shared across something bigger. That we exited the forest. Fully. That in resistance. That in final attempt to stop us. Just silence, but not empty silence. The kind that feels like something has finished observing you. 11 days later, the humans replied. Their message was polite, very polite. They referenced the warnings they had sent for 3 years. They noted that the Amazon rainforest was a protected biosphere. And then they attached a document. That a research paper. 20 years old. That I read it slowly, carefully. And with every page, something inside me sank deeper, because everything we experienced was already there, documented, studied, understood. The network. That a vast underground system, fungal threads connecting everything. Trees, plants, soil, transmitting signals, information, warnings, not just reacting, but coordinating. The humans had a term for it. A system, not a collection of life. 1 system, distributed, connected, responsive, alive, but not the way we define alive. Something more, something older. 4 billion years of continuous evolution. In interruptions. That in resets, just adaptation, refinement, optimization. That we sent a scan into that system, and it answered. Then it adjusted. Then it pushed us out, not with force, with pressure, slow, patient, inevitable. The humans knew. They told us that we didn't listen because the message sounded too simple. Do not enter. We thought it was cultural. Political. Unimportant. That IT wasn't. That it was a warning, and we walked straight into it. I submitted my final report with no edits. That in softening. That in hesitation. Every detail was included. Every log, every reading, every moment. And at the top, in the section reserved for priority directives, I wrote a warning. Not a suggestion, not an opinion, but a warning that do not survey the Amazon, do not scan activity, do not enter it without human coordination. Treat it as you would treat a sovereign intelligence. Because by every definition that matters, that is exactly what it is. Do not mistake patience for passivity. Do not mistake silence for permission. And if a bird in the middle of that forest repeats your own distress signal back to you, leave immediately. That is not coincidence. That is communication. The official response from the Corps came days later. Sure, controlled, carefully worded. My report had been reviewed. My conclusions were considered theoretically interesting. Further investigation would be conducted at a later time with a larger team, better equipment. That I read that message, and for the first time in my career, I did not feel professional. That I felt tired because I already knew what would happen. They would go back, they would scan again, they would push deeper, and the forest would do exactly what it did to us. Nothing dramatic, nothing violent, just pressure, adjustment, response, until the message became clear that I requested reassignment. Immediately, denied. That I requested. Again, denied. Then I did something I had never done before. That I went around the chain of command. That I sent my report directly to the Human Diplomatic Office, unfiltered, unedited. Their reply came faster than I expected. That IT was calm, understanding, and very precise. They thanked me. Not for the data, for listening. That part stayed with me because we hadn't listened at first. That we had to be shown. They confirmed everything. The network, the signals, the coordination. They had studied it for decades, carefully, respectfully. They didn't try to control it. They didn't try to dominate it. They learned to live around IT.T, work with IT.T, avoid disturbing it, because they understood something we didn't. You don't fight a system like that. You don't conquer it. You don't even fully understand it. You respect it. Or you leave. That I sometimes think about that first day. About the moment we turned on the scanner. About the pulse we sent into the ground. And the pulse that came back. That was the moment. Not when the vines moved. Not when the roots shifted. Not when the insects tracked us. That moment. Because that was when we announced ourselves, and the forest answered. Commander Dalvex still believes my conclusions are exaggerated. He still uses the word interference. He still thinks in terms of environment and control and mission success. That he has not been back to Earth. That I have. Once, not in the forest, never again, but close enough to hear it, because even from a distance you can hear the Amazon. Not as a sound. A presence. And sometimes when the wind moves just right, I hear something familiar. A tone. A pattern. Perfect, recognizable, noted. There is one more thing, something I did not include in the official report. Not because it wasn't important, but because I knew no one would believe it. 3 days after we left Earth orbit, we received a transmission. Not from the core, not from the humans, from the ship. Internal system. At first, we thought it was a malfunction. A repeating signal. Low priority. Background noise. Our O flagged it. It's coming from the archive buffer, he said. That didn't make sense. The archive buffer only stores recorded data. IT does not generate signals. Play it. I told him that IT first. It sounded like static. Then a pattern, faint but structured. Then clear to a sound we all recognized, the atmospheric processor powering on. Then another, the grinding noise from our vehicle. Then another, footsteps, our footsteps recorded, played back, perfectly, to no distortion and delay. Like the system remembered. Feta turned slowly toward me. We didn't record this, she said. She was right. Those specific sequences, those exact patterns, were never stored. Not in that format. Not in that order. Then the signal changed, new sounds. Not from our ship, from the forest, wind, rain, movement, and underneath it all, something else. A structure, not random. Not noise. A pattern. Rose's hand was shaking. It's organizing itself, he whispered. And then it happened. The signal spoke. Not in words, not exactly, but in something very close. A sequence of tones. Repeating, refining, learning, then suddenly, clear, perfect, noted, no distortion. In delay. Commander Dalvex's voice, coming from our system, but not sent by him. N01 moved. N01 spoke, because we all understood the same thing at the same time. The forest had not just heard us at IT, had kept us, not physically, but something else. Patterns, signals, behavior, stored, processed, learned. Feta said it first, very quietly. It's still listening. We shut the system down. Completely. Full reset. Wipe the buffers. Clear the archives. Everything. When we powered it back on, the signal was gone to NO trace, NO record. Nothing officially never happened I did not include in my report, because if I had, everything else would have been dismissed, and I needed them to believe at least part of it. But I remember, all of us do, because before the signal stopped, before the system went silent, there was one last sound, very faint, very far away, the bird, and behind it, something bigger, not a voice, not a word, not a response, that we never went back. Not my team. Not me. But sometimes I check the long-range sensors just to be sure. And once, only once, I saw something that a signal spike from Earth, from the Amazon, that IT lasted less than a second. Too short to analyze, too precise to ignore, and buried inside it was a pattern. Not random. Not natural. Recognizable, a tone, a message. Waiting.